Welcome everyone. Today is October 25th, 2024. With that, today we've released Lula version 0.10.0 as noted in our releases. This release really encompasses a number of updates to console, made some improvements, added some ability to look at details. We'll show those off in a minute. Added the ability to start running through the workflows of when you create a validation, you execute that validation with validate, and it produces assessment results. Doing that entirely from the console is something that we're going to continue to iterate on. We want to have the ability to meet parity with each of the operations that we do with the CLI in the console, so that you can have this nice view of your data. It's more human friendly, and you can get a lot of feedback across models, across various different artifacts with OSCAL, all from a single interface. So this is a goal that we're reaching for. This release also included a initial support for the profile OSCAL model. Today, what this really means is you can run Lula generate profile and pass in some additional information, and it can help you with the auto generation of an OSCAL profile template, including controls from an existing catalog that you point to. And from here, we really intend to keep pushing on each of the models' profile and its inclusion in the component definition and what that means, the validation that we're going to produce for controls, and getting that wired up is important to us, as well as any of the other models that operate with a profile, especially when it comes to profile resolution. These are updates that you can expect in the near future. So with that, what we'll do is we'll switch over. I've got Lula cloned locally. I just built Lula. So I have a local installation of the latest binary. With that, what we're going to do is look and see that I have a cluster installed. Wonderful. If I look at the pods in the cluster, you can see this is a standard kind cluster. Nothing installed there yet. If you haven't gone through the simple demo yet in the Lula repository, I would highly recommend that. It involves the steps of looking at a validation, looking at a component definition, how do those wire together, and then how do you execute something that runs against a live environment, queries the live environment, and then asserts that the data is adhering to some policy, which is a core part of the Lula workflow, and producing results that documents and attests to whether something is adhering or not. So with that, what we will do is, following the demo steps, apply a namespace. We'll create that namespace. We'll also create a pod, and we'll highlight why we're creating this pod in a second. So we'll create this pod. Wonderful. I've got another terminal over here watching that we are indeed deploying a pod to the validation test namespace. Wonderful. And so what we'll do with that, to kick this off from the Lula repository, you can take your built binary if you built from main, or if you downloaded and you have Lula running locally on your machine, you can run Lula console and pass in the demo simple OSCAL component opa.yaml file. This will open up the Lula console. This is a terminal user interface that is intended for us to continue to build upon across all of the OSCAL models. Today it supports component definitions and assessment results, so you can pass in one or the other or both. And so if we look at things, we've selected this component. There's only one component in framework in this. If we arrow right, we can select a control. We can look at the remarks and description. There's no remarks on this control currently. Recent update to console for this release includes the detail version. So if we highlight our validation here, we're now highlighting it. We click D. We can look at the Lula validation in a view that makes the output a little more human friendly. You can see this validation uses the Kubernetes domain. Here's the resource it's getting, all the pods in the validation test namespace. And from there, we're running it through a policy. And so we deployed pods to this namespace, so we expect to get data. Great. We're going to run that data through this policy provided by the OPA provider. And from there, what we will do is be able to check every pod in this namespace should have a label foo equals bar. Awesome. If you've done the tutorial before, you know that we just deployed the pod.pass YAML declaration or definition. This is going to, as you would guess, pass. The neat part of this is before you need to run Lula validate, pass in that component definition, the one we're looking at right now. So if I hit escape, we can look back at this. Wonderful. If you highlight your component here, you will notice we have a control V validate execution up here in the right hand corner of the helpers. If we execute that, you can see we now prompt you run validations ? Let's run these things. What are we running? One implemented requirement has one runnable Lula validation. That checks out with what we were looking at. We can hit enter. You'll see validating, validation complete. This will then pass you over to the assessment results view. These views can be switched by using tab or shift tab to get back. And so this is our results. This is the same assessment results file essentially that you would look at previously. It says, hey, status is satisfied, control description. If we arrow over to say the finding here, we can look at the details of that finding. We can see essentially the same items that we would expect to find in the assessment results OSCAL model. It has a description here of what was attempted to be accessed, UUIDs for the observations, and ultimately the status. It's in a satisfied state. The target ID is ID-1. This is all great information. If we head over to the observation itself, one finding can have many observations, and so you would get a lot of data in here for some of our larger OSCAL packages. And so you have an observation here, and it again provides you basically a segmented output as far as what you would expect to find in the OSCAL models, but with a little bit of highlighting to make it a little bit more friendly to read. And so with that, if we really wanted to work through the full intent of the tutorial, what we would do is then modify the environment. We're not modifying the OSCAL at all. We'll change that pod that's sitting in that cluster. You can see that's been reconfigured. And if we head back over here, we can again perform a validation with Control V. It'll perform the validation again. And what's happening here is it's actually collecting all of the data. So what you're looking at right now is the fact that it's not satisfied. That's not wonderful, but that is the intent of saying, hey, you have compliance information in OSCAL, in Lula validations of things you want to check, assessment automation. And from here, okay, well, we could find out, what's going on. Why is this the case? And we can also compare across results. So now that we've ran this 2 times, we have multiple results. If we are automatically given the latest result, we can compare that to a previous result and see that there were findings here. Okay, let's look at the findings. This is our finding. We are not satisfied. We compare that against the older one, which was satisfied originally. Now you can start to see why are things changing? What happened here? If you have outputs that describe the change in your policy, then this could be a great way to start to visualize that information. This is great. If we head down to observations, again, this kind of provides you with a little bit more output of what's happening, satisfied versus not satisfied. UUIDs, if you wanted to go and check that out, then you could find those. And last but not least, the thing to keep in mind here is that this is still producing OSCAL outputs. So if we were to exit out with Control Z to quit from the console, and we looked at our current directory, you will find assessment results in here where you could review those findings and of this information and figure out, okay, well, what happened here? Just like from the console view of kind of looking at the two from each other, you could perform an evaluation. So Lula evaluate, pass in the assessment results YAML file, and starts to get some information. Failed to meet the established threshold. The first time it passed, the second time it failed. That's not great. And so this really starts to create a parity between doing things strictly from the terminal with like an imperative CLI runtime, things you can run in CI. That's very much our goal, to also having this console interface that performs the same activities, but it gives you a lot of data across models instead of having to switch files. And we can start to create a console that can start to visualize information in different ways that make it more human friendly. So that is the first part of the update, as you saw here with console. The second part is profile. Again, this is just an initial iteration here. So if we look at Lula generate, we now have the option to generate a component or a profile. If we pass in the profile subcommand to generate, you'll see some information here about what it is you want to do. We are not validating the source of the catalogs, so you can give it a source to the actual artifact as it exists somewhere in source of truth, which I would recommend in such a way that we can capture that information. Or you can give it a local file, or you can just give it a path that you expect for which this information to exist. Ideally, this path is an actual path to the file. In the future, there likely will be some validation that occurs here. And so if we run Lula generate profile, we can pass in a source with the -s flag, which you see here, -s, catalog, profile source. We'll pass in just a placeholder for the moment, catalog.yaml. And then I is the included list of controls that you want to include from this. And so it could be includes, as denoted here with -i. If you wanted to perform getting all of the controls from a catalog or profile except for certain controls specifically, you could perform an exclude. So you have the option there, include or exclude, or you have the option for all. If you want to get all the controls from a given catalog or profile, for sake of building a new profile, you can do so with this command. So we'll do that. Execute that. You see we've written a new file, profile.yaml. What we can do is go check that out over here. Wonderful. And so what you will see is an OSCAL compliant file. Schema compliant includes the href to the file itself, or the placeholder or the source of truth with IDs. Awesome. And everything that you need to get started with your template. There's another part of this, which is the fact that we are not merging profiles together when you execute. And so if we were to do the same thing, but say we want all of the controls, you can do that, and we will produce a new profile. It will overwrite your old one if you do not redirect. If you wanted to redirect, you could pass the -o and say, call it like new profile. .yaml. Awesome. This create a new profile, has new data in it. If you prefer to work out a JSON, name it a path to a JSON file. We can produce the OSCAL in the JSON format as well. So with that, that was a majority of the latest updates for the release. As with everything, we're always building upon ensuring that our dependencies stay up to date, as well as integrating scanners. We integrated Kix and GoSec into this, so that Lula, on every PR, we can scan and make sure that we don't have any findings against infrastructure as code or the any of the Golang that we were writing that could pick up on a signal for some type of code smell that it would be vulnerable in any way, shape, or form. So those are the updates. Thank you all. See you next time.